Sometimes a person goes through events that stay with them for much longer than they would ever want. Life moves forward, but the body continues to react to sounds, to tension, and to the constant sense of a threat. And the hardest part is that people around you often say, "That's already in the past, just forget about it." But trauma doesn't work like that. Our brain doesn't know how to simply press a button and delete it. Sometimes the past continues to live on in the body, in emotions, and in the reactions of the nervous system. For example, I still sometimes react to loud bangs and doors slamming, but it's much less frequent now. Today we're going to talk about what post-traumatic stress is, why traumatic events remain so deeply embedded in the psyche, and if it's possible to recover after a severe psychological trauma. My name is Valentina Lipskaya. I am a clinical psychologist and I've spent many years working with people who have experienced severe stress, trauma, and difficult life events. One of the things that I often see is people thinking that something is wrong with them, but in reality, their psyche is simply trying to survive. Psychological trauma is not just unpleasant memories, it's an experience that proved to be far too overwhelming for the nervous system. This could be the loss of a loved one, prolonged emotional pressure, a serious threat to life, or even an unstable situation in the world. But it's important to understand one thing. Trauma is defined not only by the event itself, it's defined by how the nervous system actually experienced that event. Two people can go through the exact same situation, but one will recover faster, while the other starts to develop symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Once, a person came to see me who had survived a very serious car accident. Physically, he had already recovered, but several months had passed and he still found himself unable to get behind the wheel. Every time he heard the sharp sound of brakes, his body would literally tense up, his heart would start beating faster, and a sense of threat would appear. He said, "I understand that everything is safe now, but my body reacts as if the accident is happening over and over again." People who, like me, unfortunately, have lived or are living in troubled places develop constant states of internal anxiety and a sense of threat. The nervous system gets used to living in a constant state of survival mode. People may flinch at loud sounds, sleep poorly, experience severe anxiety, have outbursts of irritation, or even feel emotional numbness. Over time, this can have an impact on thinking, relationships, and the ability to feel truly safe, even when there is no immediate danger anywhere nearby. This is a very typical reaction in post-traumatic stress disorder because trauma is stored not just in the memory, it is stored in the nervous system. When a person experiences a severe threat, the brain switches to survival mode and the amygdala is activated, the part of the brain responsible for fear and protection. At the same time, activity in the prefrontal cortex decreases, the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking. This means that at the moment of trauma, the brain is more focused on survival than on logical analysis. Therefore, traumatic memories are often stored not as ordinary memories, but as emotional and physical reactions. Sometimes a person can even remember all the details of the events, but the body still reacts. Post-traumatic stress can manifest in different ways. Here are some of the most common symptoms. First, intrusive memories. A person may relive the traumatic event over and over again. Sometimes this happens in sleep, sometimes through sudden flashbacks. Second, increased anxiety. The nervous system is constantly in a state of high alert. A person may startle easily, feel tension, and expect danger. Third, avoidance. People begin to avoid everything that reminds them of the trauma. For example, places, conversations, situations, people. Fourth, emotional numbness. Sometimes the psyche protects itself in a different way. A person begins to feel fewer emotions, as if an emptiness appears inside. Many people ask the same question: why can't I just forget? The answer is related to brain function. Our nervous system tries to protect us from a repeated threat, so the brain begins to closely monitor any signals of danger, sometimes even too closely. And then ordinary events can be perceived as a threat. For example, a loud sound, a sudden movement, a certain smell. The brain tries to prevent the trauma from repeating, but sometimes this defense system becomes too sensitive. The good news is that the psyche has a huge capacity for recovery. This is called neuroplasticity. The brain is capable of gradually creating new connections, but for this, it's important to know a few factors. First, a safe environment. The nervous system needs to feel that the threat has now ended. Second, support. People with whom you can talk about the experience you've lived through are very important. Psychological work. Modern psychotherapy offers many methods for working with trauma. There are several things that help the nervous system gradually return to balance. This is breathing. Slow breathing reduces the activity of the stress system. Movement. Physical activity helps the body release accumulated tension. Third, awareness of emotions. When a person begins to better understand their reactions and emotions, they gradually regain a sense of control. Very often, people who have experienced trauma feel a sense of shame. They think, I should have handled it better. Something is wrong with me. But it's important to understand one thing. Post-traumatic stress is the nervous system's reaction to a severe threat. But in reality, it's not always simple. Sometimes anxiety can appear suddenly, sometimes at night, sometimes in an ordinary situation. That's exactly why we created the Dzeny app. With it, it's much easier to start a dialogue and talk about any topic. There's complete confidentiality and understanding here, and it's also recommended by psychologists as support between sessions. Download the Dzeny app developed by clinical psychologists and get psychological help 24/7 anywhere in the world. A tool that helps work with stress, understand your emotions, reduce anxiety, and support your psychological state. If this form of support resonates with you, the link to the app is in the description. When the psyche becomes calmer, the body begins to recover. Sometimes even a small realization can help bring back a sense of control. If a person has had a traumatic experience, it doesn't mean that their life will forever be defined by that event. Trauma is only a part of your story, but it doesn't have to become the whole story. Remember, recovery starts with a very simple step, with understanding yourself and your internal state.